about that. Can I ask when the Future Fellowship 2019 outcomes were provided to the Minister's office?
To the Minister's office, Senator, that would be on the 28th of June this year.
And they were publicly announced on the 17th of October, is that correct?
Yes, Senator.
So when were the Future Fellowship outcomes provided to universities?
Under embargo, they were provided to universities on the 26th of September, Senator.
How long did those fellowships outcomes sit with the Minister's office before their announcement?
Minister, I think the key dates are the ones we've just discussed, when we briefed the Minister and when they were announced.
Okay. Applications for the Discovery Early Career Researcher Award opened before the 2020 results were publicly announced. What was the reason for that delay?
Senator, we aim to open new rounds of all of our programs to give sufficient time for researchers to write an application to be submitted. As I've said previously, all announcements are at the discretion of the Minister.
Okay. Can I ask if the ARC has concerns, or if it has had concerns expressed to it, that the Minister's embargo on releasing outcomes has been so strict that universities were not able to inform the applicants of the results before they were announced?
Senator, we are aware that those concerns have been expressed. As we said, we provided information to administrative organisations under embargo because we fund administrating institutions rather than individuals. But certainly the nature of the embargo was on publication of those results rather than notifying individuals.
So what's the source of the concerns that have been expressed to you then? What's the nature of the concern? If it's not about, were there individuals who hadn't been notified because of the nature of the embargo?
Senator, we have seen that in the media. I don't have any more direct knowledge than that.
Okay, but that would be up to in terms of the universities announcing those grants?
Yes, Senator. We provide the information to institutions as administrating organisations, how they choose to deal with that information.
So you don't guide universities to make sure they tell the applicants before they make it public? We seem common courtesy to do that.
Senator, what may be relevant at this point is we have determined a process going forward which will enable us to notify universities under embargo soon after ministerial decisions are made. That will give, we hope, researchers earlier access to their information and start to allow grant agreements to be executed going forward.
Okay, so in other words, the Minister won't be able to sit on it and then announce it. It'll have to have been decided by the Minister and then have a further embargo period on it to resolve that problem.
If I can put it a different way, Minister, the process going forward will separate notification from public announcement.
Yes, that's essentially the same thing, but thank you for clarifying that. Grant applications are subject to strict closing deadlines. Why are grant outcomes not being released on a clear time frame by the ARC? And will this process give clear time frames? How will you manage the time period on which they sit with the Minister?
Senator, all announcements are at the discretion of the Minister, as I've said before. Going forward, we will continue a discussion, but we always are able to give provisional announcement dates only at this stage.
Yeah, so in other words, you can tell the institutions that the ARC's approved it, but you're waiting to see if the Minister will interfere with the approval?
Senator, if I may just clarify, the CEO makes recommendations to the Minister makes the decision.
I have been through this before.
And what we were just talking about was that the Minister will have made a decision when before the ARC notifies institutions under embargo of the outcome.
Yes.
So there's...
But the Minister has no time frame for which
That's
this
correct.
is the case. So rather than rejecting applications as the Minister has done in the past, if the Minister didn't like an application, they could just let it sit on their desk.
I think that's speculation, Senator.
But technically it would be true, wouldn't it?
It's speculation, hypothetical.
It's not hypothetical, it's procedural. You've told me that there is no required timeline for the Minister to approve them in. Is that correct or not?
But I think the linkage that you just made between the Minister's discretionary timeline and not wanting to release is a very arduous one.
Oh, look, I can understand ministers have different work habits. They can, some are very good at getting these things done. Some might want to macerate on it while they are deliberating on it and make a proper decision. But there has to come a point at which the Minister deals with it. Yeah,
But that's in his or her discretion.
So does the ARC have concern about the impact of uncertainty in relation to timeframe announcements and implementation of these grants on researchers and the universities?
Senator, as we have said, there are not now and there have never been specific dates for announcement of ARC grants, but we do understand that researchers are keen to know their results and they are pinning their hopes on the success of those. So,
but it's a bit more than that, isn't it? They might get poached by another country, they might have to find another job because they're waiting for an ARC grant.
yes?
So, Senator, I think that Professor Thomas already talked about our new process for announcing under embargo. We would anticipate that would alleviate those concerns.
Okay. Mr Dunham, can I ask you how long you think these grants should sit on the Minister's desk for?
Well, I think Senator Pratt, that any minister will work as assiduously as to get their work done, as you outlined before in your various scenarios that you put to the officers at the table. So I'm not going to set down a timeline for other ministers about how they do their work at all. But I have absolute faith in all of my colleagues that they do it in a timely fashion.
So you can't consider fixed dates for grant announcements because essentially everything is within your control other than the Minister's sign-off process?
The Minister is the decision maker and announcements are at his or her discretion.
Okay. Has a national interest test begun being applied? If not, when will it begin to be applied?
Yes, Senator. The National Interest Test is applying to a number of selection rounds that opened post the Minister's original announcement, but none of those selection rounds have been finalised yet.
None of those, sorry?
None of those selection rounds have been finalised yet.
Okay.
Sorry.
So the national interest test will kick in after the... Sorry, I'm a little bit confused by that answer because if the round hasn't been finalised, is it embedded into that round?
So on the pathway to a ministerial decision is when the national interest test...
At which point is it being implemented?
So under the process at the moment, the ARC CEO considers the national interest test statements of all applications that are recommended to me by the selection advisory committees, and I recommend applications that meet the NIT test and which are highly recommended to the Minister for his decision.
Okay, so you have begun to apply them,
Yes, Senator.
but has the Minister got any of those applications before him that have the national interest test included?
Yes, Senator.
How many? How many ARC grants are currently sit with the Minister waiting approval, and how long have they been there in his office for?
Senator, I'm not able to give you a number. The items in process include the Discovery projects, Discovery Indigenous, the Linkage Infrastructure and Equipment Scheme, linkage projects, and the Special Research Initiative in Antarctic Science. And they're at different stages. I certainly didn't mean to suggest they are all at the, sitting with the Minister.
So they're the ones that have the national interest test on them.
Yes.
What grants, if you can take on notice, please, what grant streams are with the Minister and the date on which they were given to the Minister?
Yes, Senator.
Would any of the projects the ARC has funded previously not be successful under the test thus far in your assessment, Professor Thomas?
That would be speculation on my part, Senator. The Minister is the decision maker.
Okay, in terms of the process and what you put up to the Minister, how has the national interest test changed what gets to the Minister's desk?
Senator, it has not changed. My role is that I am not a disciplinary expert. I look at the statements to see if they are logical and that they apply to the project being proposed.
Okay, so there's no definition of national interest in that. Essentially, therefore, you make sure it meets the criteria for a statement around a national interest test, but it's then up to the Minister to apply it as to whether it meets the Minister's values of what the national interest test is?
Senator, the definition of the national interest test written into our guidelines is that it could be in the form of economic, commercial, social, environmental or cultural benefits. And the Minister may or may not use the national interest test text in coming to a decision.
Okay, that makes sense. But clearly you've got to rate other parts of the proposals in terms of having made them through to the Minister's desk for approval, because you weed out a vast number of them and break many hearts along the way. What's the difference between what you do with the national interest test and the other ARC assessments that you do?
So the cornerstone of the ARC process is about peer review or expert review from academics who are within a specific discipline or cognate disciplines. And so that's the basis of our review and quality ranking. The national interest test sits separate to that and is a text that the Minister may choose to use or not in coming to his decision.
Okay, and so you don't evaluate it, you, if you like, just working out whether the statement as provided ticks the boxes, and that makes sense. Okay, thank you. So do you expect to see a change in the number or type of projects that receive funding under the test?
Senator, this is our first year of applying the test. We have engaged closely with universities about how the test may be met in different ways by different disciplines without providing them with template text. And what we'll be looking at after we've had some experience in its application is the various ways in which people expressed that.
Does the ARC have concern that this test will justify the Minister picking and choosing individual research projects on political whims like we saw under the Minister Birmingham?
That would be a question for the Senator, since the time that the grants were declined to be funded by the previous minister, there has been a new process put in place where if the minister declines to fund something that's recommended by the CEO, that will be something that we will notify institutions of.
Okay. Are you concerned that this test will make it more difficult to achieve your target of increasing international collaboration in research?
No, Senator.
No, Senator. The ARC is concerned at all times to balance good value and good investment for the Australian public with the need as a research funding organisation to have researchers that are part of the international community of scholars, because in research you build on the work of others that have gone before you.
But those research collaborations that are taking place internationally now have a statement attached that the objects are in, that the research is in Australia's national interest, but clearly your concern might be what is in international interest, what, in terms of where the research trends are going. Not necessarily mutually exclusive statements, but they could be in terms of, unless the minister, if the minister were to not recognise that an international collaboration also met a national interest test.
Senator, if I may, the international collaboration, I think, will remain a key feature of the ARC's granting programs. There's within Australian research sectors, the way in which they operate, they do collaborate internationally. So I don't see that there will be a decline in the number of international collaborations.
Thank you.